Howdy, everybody. Welcome to TRAK 27 Part 2. This is a Rook and the Kid Christmas, the second edition with the Analyst. I'm your host, The Rook, and we're here to shatter the script and give y'all some predictions on the upcoming Week 16 game. Before we get started, if you are a first-time listener or if you are a current listener, we want to, thank you for your support and thanks for listening. But also, hey, if you haven't downloaded this episode or the previous episode already, make sure to download, follow, subscribe, and share the episode if you want with the rest of the crew. And, you know, we're excited to share what we have today and do this two-part series. Then we'll have that week off next week, and then we'll get back to it in 2024. So a brand new year, a brand new strategy, and we're ready to go. We're going to have a lot of fun things in store for you guys, a lot of new additions, new features, possibly some new guests, which is what we've been working on since the football season started. But without further ado, you know, the Analyst is here as well. The medical guy was on the previous one, so we appreciate the Analyst joining on this one as well. And let's get into our Shatter the Script segment, which we're covering the RG3 talking about the Sean Payton and Russell Wilson scenario. So we'll throw that up there and we'll play this video for you guys. And let's get it.
For me, with Russell and Sean Payton, they asked Sean after the game, why did he yell at Russell like that? And Sean said, well, whatever I talk with Russell about ain't none of your business. And I don't disagree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But
that's coach.
Sean Payton, as a coach, if you don't want people to ask that question, then you can't do that to your quarterback on the sideline. And the only reason I feel that way is because this is like the second or third iteration of Sean Payton doing something to Russell, to me, that makes it seem like that's not his guy. So to your point, sometimes a coach will get on somebody, because the quarterback in particular, because he wants to show the rest of the team like, hey, I'm not playing favorites. I'm going to get on everybody. Right. In that moment, it didn't feel like that. To me, that moment said, you're not my guy. I don't respect you. I don't like you. Whatever it may be, he embarrassed his quarterback on the sideline. And now the rest of the team, in my opinion, is more so looking at that moment like, damn, Sean Payton really don't rock with Russell Wilson. And I thought Russell handled it perfectly. It's within his personality to not react in those moments. Yeah. But I thought he handled it perfectly, because now it's essentially, after this conversation between me and you, it's a non-story. But I do feel like Sean Payton should come out in the media publicly and apologize to Russell Wilson. Not because he's a head coach. When you're a head coach, you can do whatever you want. But he's got to show solidarity in this playoff push that he's got his quarterback's back. And I don't think he did that in that moment.
Yeah, and so there's a couple things to add here. I mean, for one, it just seems like I'm hearing a lot of trends in the current NFL where we're seeing a lot of victimization between players, whether it be playing on a different day than Sunday, whether it be getting chewed out on the sideline, you know, whether it be penalty flags being thrown, whether it be, oh my God, like, why does everybody want to watch the Cowboys lose? Because it's good for business, whatever it may be. It seems like in the current NFL today, it's a common theme to where hard coaching and that hard-nosed mentality of that old school way is just scrutinized against. And in my current take with this scenario, with, you know, if you haven't seen the clip with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, kind of going after one another on the sideline after they got blown out by the Denver Broncos in Week 15. It's just, I didn't have a problem with it personally. I really think that there are certain things, and, you know, the Analyst has been, you know, obviously we kind of mocked the passing charts with Russell Wilson. We've done it for about, you know, eight or 9 weeks. And it's just the overrated performance. Before the year, you had to contact an agent to get a hold of Russell Wilson, and then you get into a team like the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton, who his previous quarterback was Drew Brees, who was the stand-up citizen, who was the guy that stood up for the city, who had he was the guy that never really made any mistakes. and you go to a Russell Wilson who's kind of a prima donna. And it's nothing to say about Russell Wilson himself as a person, but for me personally, if I was getting chewed into on the sideline like I've had before, and it doesn't matter if it's high school sports, college sports, NFL, it's the same. And it's kind of to get your head in gear, get the gears turning, and to when you get back in the field, let loose. And it reminds me of that scene from it was Kurt Russell and the actor from the Miracle on Ice with the Mighty V and stuff, and he goes in the locker room and he's like, they got that one hockey player down. He goes, "We're playing Sweden. We're playing Sweden. We're in the mother F in the Olympics or whatever. Y'all playing like it's like we're up here in New York City or something like that. This is serious. This is the Olympics. This is professional. We're up here to present a brand." And he riles him up saying, "Are you going to be a hockey player? Are you going to be a hockey player tonight? Are you going to show up for your team?" And he's like, "I want to be a hockey player. I want to be a hockey player." He's like, walks out of the locker room. He's like, "You think that'll rile them up? Get some fire up beneath their ass." And so that's kind of my take on it. Is just I have always been a fan of the hard coaching. And I think that regardless of who it is, I don't care if it's Justin Herbert, I don't care if it's Mahomes, I don't care if it's Dak freaking Prescott. If I have a coach getting on somebody's ass, it's on. I'm going back on that field the next drive, and I want to play harder.
Yeah. I think the backstory is important here too. It's like this happened after the drive. I was telling you about it when you came over to the house the one time. The Broncos got down to basically the 1 yard line on one play, and it looked like a touchdown. And Russell Wilson called tempo, got up to the line. This was against the Lions. And then he tried to get the ball in again with Jamal Williams. And it could have been a second reviewable play.
Yeah.
And then he got to the line again, and they had the false start and they had to kick the field goal. So when he comes back to the sideline, Sean Payton's ripping into him. And like Russell Wilson, to me, looks like he kind of like lays down like a dog. And like, so I guess to RG3's defense, like what he was saying is that's just Russell Wilson's like mentality is like he's going to receive it and understand and just say yes sir and let it go. But like this to me is the buildup of what Sean Payton said at the beginning of the year, which is he's tired of Russell Wilson's antics, and it's exactly what you were talking about with Drew Brees. Is like Drew Brees was the guy that did everything the way you wanted a quarterback to act. Like nobody ever had a bad thing to say about Drew Brees, and he was a leader. I mean, everybody respected Drew Brees, and that's why he threw for so many yards for so many years. Is because he was a true like leader and was great at his craft. And so I think that's what Sean Payton's frustration is with Russell Wilson, and that's why I'm so hard on Russell Wilson. Is because when you do the fake 2-minute drill crap, when you're sitting there doing it, running it by yourself, and then you're standing in the middle of the Seattle Seahawks 50-yard line with your hands out like you're Jesus, absorbing whatever power he's trying to absorb, and then your guys can't contact you through an agent, and then on top of that, you're always posting on Instagram like, one day at a time, working, blah 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 blah, and then you're doing all this crap in the off season. Sean Payton came in at the beginning of the year and was like, I'm not putting up with that crap. You don't have your own office. Like, you're my quarterback, but, by God, you're as available as everybody else. You're not some God that everybody's going to have to go through a priest to talk to. Like, you're my quarterback. You need to be in the locker room and be with the guys. You need to be open. So I think this is like a buildup of what's been happening with Russell Wilson. So Sean Payton's basically whipping him in the ass and telling him, like, hey, let's get it together.
Yeah.
So I think that was more of what it was. And it falls right into line with hard coaching. Like, if he's going to chew his ass out, that he probably had a valid reason to get his ass chewed out. It's just like last year when that Purcell chewed him out coming off the sidelines. It's because he was tired of Russell Wilson's antics. So it's like, I respect Russell Wilson to a certain extent. I've had my things with him on this podcast, but man, I mean, have some self-awareness, I think, is what Sean Payton's trying to get at there. So I can see both sides, but at the end of the day, I think it shows Sean Payton's like, hey, we want to win this ball game, and I'm going to get in your butt about it because I need you to play better. I mean, they were getting routed by the Lions. So
yeah, it could be a change of culture and a change of standard, and this isn't the way that we do things here in Denver anymore, sort of thing. And that's something that I respect because, Sean Payton is somebody that you can respect, and Russell Wilson's past is somebody that you can look at and go, okay, yeah, he's had a valid career, but it doesn't change the fact that you're above anybody else, like you mentioned. Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's move on into the 2-minute drill presented by the Analyst. This is, your stat play video analysis, your statistical highlights from the previous week, all in under 2 minutes, 0% of the time. So we got the 2-minute drill. I'll let you have at it.
Yeah, so usually, when we don't do 2 parts, usually I will give you the recap of the week, but that was, it's kind of like the part 1 was the history. Now we're looking forward. So I'll give you the Thursday night recap of the Saints and Rams game, and I have actually a really cool play to show you guys. And this just kind of points to how Sean McVay is just light years. I mean, young coaching in the NFL is taking over. But anyway, so Saints-Rams game. Rams won 30-22. Start this off. Score really doesn't show the game. The Saints made a comeback effort with like a late touchdown. Yeah. They blocked a punt. Then they got another touchdown. And then the Rams basically got the ball back and with an onside and closed it out. But anyway, Matthew Stafford had 328 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I got to tell you, man, I think he broke a record for this. Is his 5th straight game with 2+ touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And he's the first Rams player to ever do it. Yeah. So he's looking good right now. He's healthy. And that's always been the thing with Matthew Stafford is he has some weird injury and tries to play through it. But right now he looks very healthy and he is slinging the rock. Yeah, and that just leads me right into the next guy, Puka Nacua. I mean, I said at the beginning of the year that when Cooper Kupp would come back, I didn't think that he would stay with it. But, man, this has been a huge year for him. He is not far from breaking the record for rookie receiving yards.
Yeah,
he's 160. Yeah, he's 164 yards away from breaking the rookie receiving record. And so I almost like the thing that I've been saying forever is Stafford is really good at just force feeding one receiver. So I don't know if that speaks more to Puka being, a formidable wide receiver, or does it speak more to Stafford can throw to anybody? It's crazy. But to follow that up, Kyren Williams, 22 carries, 104 yards. This is actually his 5th straight game with 100+ yards on the ground. So the Rams are cooking. They're back into it. So that's a team that if they make the playoffs, you particularly don't want to see. They look completely different than they did when they played Dallas. So, and then we talk about our favorite team on this podcast, the New Orleans Saints, and how terrible they can be. So Derek Carr had 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. The stats, this is a perfect example of box score. Box score doesn't tell the story. So, his stats, they really don't show the full story, but he just doesn't look good. And the Saints are just such a mad team right now. I mean, I almost just want to say it's the coaching because, you look at who they've got. You got at receiver, you've got Olave, you've got Kamara at running back. Like, he's getting older, but he's still a pretty good back. And then you've got Rashid Shaheed. They've got weapons. And Derek Carr used to not be too bad, and he's not doing it. But, Kamara, 9 carries, 19 yards, 5 receptions, 16 yards. Worst fantasy performance to date in a time for a lot of fantasy owners, me. So, tough scene there. And then Olave had a pretty good game. I already mentioned him, 9 receptions, 123 yards. So, overall, 30-22 Rams. But, it was like with 8 minutes to go, they were up 30-7. So, it wasn't much of a game. But anyway, so now we're going to move into the play. I think this is a pretty cool one this week.
Okay.
And this one is so it's a laser dagger concept. What that means is that they're in 11 personnel here, so that means 1 tight end, as you can see on the bottom here. And I don't know if you can see. Jared, can you see?
Yeah, we can see it. I can't see your mouse. Oh, now I can. There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so you got the tight end down here, and they start off in Tripp's bunch left. So you've got DeMarcus. Let me remember his name here. I think
Robinson.
DeMarcus Robinson, Cooper Kupp, and this is Puka Nacua. And you've got Tyler Higbee lined down over here. So you've got trips up top, tight end down below. But before I start this play, this is a really cool stat. The Rams are one of the most motion before the snap teams in the league. They use motion more than almost any other team in the league. I think the Miami Dolphins are the only ones that lead over them. So that's important to know, since this, motions just open up so much for a quarterback. When you have a guy like Matt Stafford who can read defenses pretty well, it's very helpful. So like I said, they line up in a trips bunch, and what you'll do is you'll see them shift here into a deuce right concept. So now that lets Stafford know he's got this one high safety up top, and you got Tyrann Mathieu crawling down right here to Tyler Higbee, and this cornerback's going to take over. So it looks like man to start. But this is what I was talking about with motions here. What they're about to do is they're going to motion Puka back behind Cooper Kupp. So
let's roll it.
Here it comes back. So Stafford motions and pause it right there. What Stafford sees is now Tyrann Mathieu, since we got the motion back across, it puts the safeties back up high. So that lets Stafford know, since nobody's following him, that's a zone.
Yep.
So the motion creates the shift that I was talking about, and the Rams run what is called a dagger concept. So you'll see the running back, Kyren Williams, is about to take off in flat. You're going to see Kupp run a fly route, and he's about to clear out this entire middle of the field. And DeMarcus Robinson is going to run with like a post corner route, or just a simple corner route. He's going to run in and out and up, or in, up, and out. And then you're going to watch Puka, because he came in motion. He's already full speed. He's going to come right through the middle here. See there, Cooper's going to take that linebacker out of the play, and that just brings Puka Nacua right over the middle for an easy 20-yard gain.
Gobbing wide open.
Yeah, so that, shout out to Cooper Kupp. He takes the top off the defense. This is something that I would like to see Dallas maybe use a couple times with Brandon Cooks, and they do it probably pretty constantly with CeeDee Lamb instead of Puka Nacua. But that is a classic shifting of defenses, and it's pretty cool play design, because it's an awesome modification to a simple and effective route concept, but it allows the receivers to find space with motion. So that is the play of the week for me. I thought that was a really cool concept, especially because it's under center. At one point it looks simple, the next point, it's going from complicated pre-snaps to easy simplified routes for the receivers, and an easy look for Matt Stafford. So
yeah,
that's the play of the week.
That's an elite play design, and I want the record to be shown that the Puka Nacua belongs on the all-white team for sure. I don't care if he's an Islander, but he is on the all-white team, and the Rams have the weapons. I figured out last night that Kyren Williams actually has I think he has a white mom, so I think Kyren Williams might be on the all-white team as well. But Stafford has always been the kind of guy that throws to those kinds of players, and the Rams, man, they're cooking. They're not, like you said, they're not the same team that you saw when Dallas played them at home. Now, would that same scenario happen again, but they met in the playoffs? I think the Dallas Cowboys would take them. But Stafford in his last 5 games, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's been really balling. I told a lot of people I didn't put him in my Rooks looks in part 1, but man, I told a lot of people to start him. They took my advice, and they were happy with it, getting 25 points PPR. So shout out to Matthew Stafford. He's really coming to his own. But I think the main catalyst of this offense, and where you saw the most difference, was in Week 10 was when Kyren Williams returned to the offense. He has become an electric back. He's changed the offense, and he's the catalyst moving to the Los Angeles Rams. But the last thing I'll say about the Saints before we move on to some more predictions is that, I've been covering them a lot. We kind of have the inside joke that, the medical guy has been covering a lot of the Lions this season. I've been covering a lot of the Saints, and man, I have been dead to rights on the Saints, about Dennis Allen, about the arsenal that they have, offensively and defensively, the talent that they have around them. They've had a very easy schedule before the season. A lot of people said that the Saints defense would be a perfect pickup for a late round draft pick in fantasy football. And they have just disappointed all year long. Might not even make the playoffs anymore. And if you go look at their schedule, I dare you guys to go look at the schedule and tell me, is this acceptable for an NFL team with this kind of roster, with this kind of expectations? And it's a lot like when the Cowboys went 8-8 3 years in a row. It was not expected, and it was a disappointment, and that's why you get rid of a coach, early on, because he is not the answer. But let's go into some predictions now. Week 16. This is a big week. This is your semifinals for a lot of people. For some people, this is your NFL, your fantasy football championship. So these are some very important games if you're trying to win some money, but also for playoff seeding and playoff entry as well. But yeah, Rams moved to 8-7. Saints moved to 7-8. I had a couple questions to start out first. We've got Jake Browning over there on the Bengals. We covered him a little bit in the recap. Obviously, he's been 3-1 as the Bengals quarterback since he took the reins over. Well, now he gets to play Pittsburgh with, Kenny Pickett and the struggles that they're having over there. I think this is Kenny Pickett's first game back since he's been injured. And then he follows it up with Kansas City and Cleveland. And I guess my question is, one, obviously, I think that the Bengals can take Pittsburgh this weekend if they do their job, if they get the ball in the hands of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon, kind of pound the rock a little bit against this Pittsburgh team, keep the offense off the field, even though the Pittsburgh offense isn't a threat. And he can move to 9 wins. He can move to 9-6. And do you think that it is enough if Jake Browning wins against Pittsburgh to take them to the playoffs? And obviously he could upset Kansas City or Cleveland, but realistically, you're looking at probably 9-8 for the Bengals. And what does that say about this team and the importance of weapons? But, what are your thoughts on like Jake Browning, his performance, and if he wins this game, do you think that the Bengals can make the playoffs?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a tough ask just because the AFC, like we pointed out, I think last time I was on here, the race is tight in the AFC. I mean, just to recap, you've got the whole AFC South sitting at 8-6, basically, except for the Titans. You've got Denver sitting at 7-7, and even like the Raiders are 6-8. They're still in it if they went out, which probably not. But basically the teams that we're looking at here, you got the Bills, the Browns, the Bengals, the Colts, the Jags, and the Texans, all sitting one game in between each other, and that's huge. So, yeah. Like you just said, the Bengals play the Steelers starting out, and those have playoff implications just because the Steelers are still kind of in the hunt too. But I think Jake Browning can win this game, and I said last time I picked him as like my backup quarterback if I had to have one. He's just balling out. I mean, he's played really good for the Bengals, and but this will be a tough. One thing I will note: this will be a tough test with Chase being out, and that Steelers defense isn't too shabby. But, in this game, I've got the Bengals 24-10 with a strong outing from the Bengals offense. I think they win this game. But, yeah, like you pointed out, that it's that what the Bengals do every year is that they start off terribly. Everybody counts them out, and then they win 13 games and end up being 13-4. And now they're in a position. Yeah, now they're in a position where they've lost Burrow. Now they're in a position where that 0-4 start really, really hurts them. So those next 2 games will be tough, and it's just going to be like they got to focus on themselves and win. So for this game, I've got them winning. But, in the next 2, I don't know. That's going to be a tough ask for Jake Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Burrow is the I guess the top quarterback killer, if you could say. I mean, he's had the Chiefs' number in the past. He's had Josh Allen's number in the past, but you don't have him anymore. So when you're playing Kansas City in a really important game with your backup quarterback, it's going to be a tough challenge. But the Chiefs have had their struggles so far this season, and they've shown that they are absolutely beatable. But I have the Bengals in this game as well. I've got them winning in a low-scoring ball game, 21-16 versus the Steelers, and I've just totally given up on the Steelers offense. I'm so sick of seeing Deontay Johnson give up on plays. I'm so sick of seeing George Pickens be a selfish prick, throughout, giving up on blocks. He doesn't want to get hurt. The locker room is against each other in the Steelers, both defensively and offensively. They've had their complaints against each other in the media. It's just a disaster over there. And, Ryan Clark has pointed out on ESPN and the rest of the mainstream media has mentioned it, that Mike Tomlin should just get the hell out of there. And the culture for the Steelers has just completely changed. And I think
it's so weird to see, because the Steelers are always like that one team in the NFL that always, no matter who plays for them, like, the whole joke is like, Antonio Brown being stable and Le'Veon Bell and all that. But like, it's just very uncharacteristic to see the Steelers be like basically a shit show in the middle of their season. So it's very odd.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on into the Browns versus the Texans game. Of course, we were going to ask some questions about Josh Allen maybe winning MVP if he wins out. I think that could be a possibility, but I think the main MVP, we'll get into it later with the Ravens and the 49ers. I think that's the most realistic option with, Lamar and Brock Purdy. But Sunday at noon, you've got the Browns 9-5 versus the Texans 8-6. The spread is actually Houston -2.5. In my predictions, I'll start this one out. I think Stroud's return is and I don't even think he's good enough to play. From what I've heard, he can't even, look into lights yet. So I don't think he's going to be able to play this Sunday, which is really big against, Cleveland's top 5 defense in the NFL. And so I had to kind of flip my predictions around, but I do think this is going to be a nasty one. It's going to be a close one. The Browns more healthier. They've got a rhythm with Joe Flacco at quarterback. I've got the Browns winning this game 17-16 in a very close one. And this is all that matters when you're Cleveland. You've got that veteran presence in Flacco, who's been in this kind of situation before, whether it be with the Ravens, just doing his job, making the throws he's got to make. He's done a very good job of targeting his number one receiver in Amari Cooper. They've done a great job, utilizing their defense, a lot like they did with the Cowboys when they had Cooper Rush starting, and they won those couple of games against teams that were not as good offensively or defensively, you can argue. And it has nothing to say that the quarterback is better than the opposer. It's just that they know how to win in terms of, hey, our defense can carry us to the promised land. Joe Flacco, we just need you to keep, turnovers in check. They got away with one after he threw 3 picks last week. But yeah, I've got the Browns in a close one, 17-16. Flacco continues to do his job as the veteran and protects the football this week. And I think Njoku, the tight end over there, has a big game once again. I think they found kind of their recipe for moving the football over there with Njoku and Amari Cooper.
Yeah. I was going to say that's the note I have. I have some insider trading info for the Texans from a unnamed source. If you listen to our podcast before, you would know how I know this, but I doubt Stroud plays in this game from what I've heard. Jared kind of stole my line. The inside source that I know says that he's still, after a week and a half of getting a concussion, he still is very sensitive to light. I myself have had a couple concussions, but I've never had one to that extent. That's pretty bad. Yeah. So I have the 2 notes I have is without Stroud, the Browns win 21-10. With Stroud, I still think the Browns win 21-17. I think that defense is going to be too much for Stroud, even if he was out there. And with Tank Dell being out, I think that really hurts the Texans. I mean, he's got, Nico Collins in them, but that Browns defense has shown that they can carry the weight of that football team. So I think Flacco is just good enough to get them by, and they'll keep winning. But come playoff time, you're going to need some type of offense to keep up with a lot of the high-powered teams in the AFC. But, with Stroud, it's 21-17. Browns, without Stroud, I have 21-10.
Very nice. Yeah. Sunday, it's 3:25. This is your afternoon game. I think this is the most important one of the week, which is why we chose this one in the time slot. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Jaguars are 8-6. The Buccaneers are 7-7. Baker Mayfield coming off that big 381 yards passing, 4 touchdowns versus the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field in December, which is valid, and the spread here is Jacksonville -1.5. It was the last time I checked. It could have changed by now. It's a very even game. One of the fun facts that I found before we started recording this was Trevor Lawrence has the most turnovers since 2021 with 55 turnovers. He has the same amount of touchdowns than he does turnovers. 55 touchdowns, 55 turnovers.
Smokes, I didn't know that.
It's a wow factor. And I was talking to the kid last night. We were kind of visiting, in the living room, just talking some ball, talking shop. And, we don't want to jump the gun on being, he doesn't want to jump the gun on being wrong about his agenda with Trevor Lawrence. And obviously I want to let him speak for himself. But I mean, this year has just been kind of a let go year, and it's been a down year for Trevor Lawrence. And we really haven't seen the amazing Trevor Lawrence that we've been anticipating. And to say that, it's also, there's things to consider here, like Calvin Ridley. This is his first year back in, over a year. I get it. You're still, some people argue you could be still getting into game shape. They have a problem that the last 2 weeks I've been talking about it, of targeting him, completing more than 50% of his targets that are intended for him, which is aggravating, especially if you're a fantasy owner. He's been one of those, should I start him? But I think he has a good game. Oh, shit, I got 1.5 PPR points. Oh, this week I put him on the bench and he's got 28 points on the bench. And the most consistent guy, which the last time me and the analysts were on the podcast together, I mentioned this specifically, was Christian Kirk, was really acting as that high-end wide receiver 2, very good against man coverage, but he's out. And ever since then, I think Trevor Lawrence has kind of taken a step back, which is why I have the Bucs winning this game 21-17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really think that Baker Mayfield has really found his momentum. I think that Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers win this division. The Atlanta Falcons have kind of given up on the division. The Saints just lost this week against the Rams. The Buccaneers are really feeling some momentum right now. They could really finish positive. Probably 9-8 is a good projection for them. But also, there's a chance that T-Law might not play this weekend, which means I think that's a guaranteed Tampa Bay win. I don't think CJ Beathard can weather the Tampa Bay defense. But I love what Baker Mayfield is doing in the Bay. I think that's his team now. I think on this one-year prove-it deal, he's with 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on the year. All the doubts have been, not essentially proven wrong, but you know exactly the recipe it takes to win with Baker Mayfield. And I think the Browns were kind of wrong to get rid of him, even though there might have been a better option out there. But I don't think he was deserving. I don't think he was deserving to get released or moved off of. At the time, he was the only person that got him to the playoffs and broke that drought. They knew the recipe. Get a solid run game, have a solid defense. And there are guys like this in the NFL that need a lot of weapons to at least win you over 500%, over 0.500, get you over 500 is the best way to say it in the NFL. So, yeah, I've got the Bucs winning this game 21-17, especially if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play.
That's interesting. I actually have on here that I think Mayfield is a pretty underrated QB, so I think you just made that case pretty well. But I think what I was going to say is I think both teams, and I already kind of mentioned it earlier, both teams have dubbed this game a must-win. The Jags got to win to stay on top of the AFC South, and the Bucs have to win to stay on top of the NFC South. Luckily for them, the Saints lost. We already talked about that. But if the Bucs lose and Atlanta wins, then all three of those teams are stuck at 7-8 again. So the Bucs see this as an opportunity to take NFC South's first place with a win here, and the Jags look to stay on top of the AFC South. So both these teams are going to dub it as a must-win for sure. But yeah. I actually had, if Trevor Lawrence plays, that is, I actually have I'm taking the better QB, the better coach, and the better roster here. I think the Jags kind of slightly have a better roster than the Bucs. So I have them taking – I'm taking the Jags over the Bucs, 31-24. So I think it'll be a high-scoring game. But if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, which I feel like is like the scenario for like the two games we've been talking about, is if a team or a quarterback doesn't play. If Lawrence doesn't play, I have the Bucs winning 24-10. So I don't think it'll be much of a game if Trevor Lawrence is not out on that field.
Yeah, and that's the recipe for the Buccaneers. They're not going to be that type of team, except out of last week to score 40 points a game. But their defense is a top 15, I would say, defense, and they're the type of guys that'll give you fits if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So okay, let's move in. So this is Christmas Day, the Christmas Day slate, as you will. You can see it on the bottom banner there. The Christmas, the Santa sleigh, acronym,
Sleep.
whatever. The little slate. But yeah, so these are kind of our quick picks. But you got the 9-5 Chiefs versus the 6-8 Raiders. Kansas City Chiefs, the last time I checked, was a -10 favorite in this game at the betting odds. And so the Raiders have had a tough time beating the Chiefs for a while. Patrick Mahomes almost never loses to divisional opponents. The Denver Broncos did it earlier this year in an upset win. However, the Chiefs are kind of starting to find their stride. They understand how, Rashee Rice, their wide receiver one, can contribute to the offense. Even when Travis Kelce is slow, Rice kind of picks up the slack. I believe they're getting Isaiah Pacheco back. They've had great production from Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon in his absence. I think they're an angry football team right now, and the Raiders are coming off that blowout victory versus a very distraught and given up Chargers team. So I've got the Chiefs in a blowout. I've got them 30-14 beating the Raiders.
It's pretty close to what I had.
Yeah, and my main reason behind it was that Kansas City does not lose divisional games. Yeah.
They have dropped a couple this year, but that goes back to the point we've been making. It's just like the major whiteout struggles of the Chiefs.
Yes.
But I follow exactly what you're saying. I have the Chiefs winning that game 31-10.
Yeah. I don't think it's very close. I don't think Aiden O'Connell. I mean, we've been mentioning the Kansas City Chiefs defense as well all this year. That they're louder than their offense. They've been playing exceptional most,
which is very not Chiefs-like. But that speaks to the weapons that the Chiefs have on their offensive side. Exactly.
Okay, and then moving on to the game later in the week. This is your NFC East divisional game. Tommy DeVito, who just trademarked a bunch of his, Tommy Cutlets or whatever. Your 5-9 Giants versus your 10-4 Philadelphia Eagles. The spread is even higher in this game. It also, again, this might have changed after they lost to Seattle, but this is a -11 spread favoring Philadelphia Eagles. And so, what is your prediction on this game?
Well, I just checked the spread. The spread's -10.5 right now.
Oh, there you go.
But I have a couple interesting notes on this one. I have that this one's kind of tough, believe it or not. I am uncertain of a lot of things for the Eagles. I watched the game versus Seattle, and I just wasn't very impressed. I watched them get blown out by the 49ers, and I watched Dallas handle them with ease. Just Jalen's regression, which we said he would, has been pretty big to me. The abysmal defense that they have. I mean, they have so many names on defense, and they just can't seem to do anything with it. They can't cover anybody to save their lives, and that's a big issue, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But I also have that the Giants are kind of on a come up. They're kind of riding this DeVito train.
Yeah.
Like what's going on with that? They kind of are starting to turn the tide a little bit on their season, trying to make a final push to be a little bit better. But every part of me wants to put the Eagles on a solid upset alert here. It's a divisional game. They've kind of been on the outs, but that might just be the hate I have for the Eagles. So with that, I'm going to take the Eagles over the Giants 24-21 in a tight one. I feel like they're losing their stride. I don't know. I've watched them the last couple of weeks, and I just I've told you I'm not impressed. Especially with Jalen Hurts, and I just feel like they don't really have an identity, which I've been saying since week one, is that on offense, what is their identity? And, that now that they're getting through the season and people are getting film on them, they haven't decided. And I don't know. I feel like this game is going to be close, especially because it's a division game, obviously, but I think the Eagles win, but I would not be willing to take that -11.
Yeah.
Or the -10.5 now spread line for sure. So
yeah, me neither. And in part one, I shouted you out and said, like, hey, you've been right about the Eagles all year long, escaping their identity and making Hurts somebody that, really that he's not. And I know most of the league wants to accept or really imagined Hurts being this absolute gunslinger, but that's just not who he is. And it's okay to admit that. And he's not a bad quarterback. But I mean, you got to play to your strengths. You got to play to the scheme that works best. You don't scheme around a scheme. You scheme around your players. And Jalen Hurts is not a gunslinger that should be throwing 40 times a game, which is, again, like I mentioned in part one, this is why your Philadelphia fans, the city of brotherly love, are sitting outside of the practice facility saying, run the freaking ball.
Yeah.
And I think Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen were huge losses for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I'm also contradicting myself here in a way, and I think the Eagles blow out the Giants 38-20. And It's not the way that you think. I think that Jalen Hurts actually has a massive game through the air. And it's not to say that it's like a game where Jalen Hurts proves that he can throw it. It's just one of those games where they're going to not really change anything that they've done in the past. And they're just going to be able to find ways to connect to A.J. Brown. And you're going to see 2-3 touchdowns from Jalen Hurts in this game, in my opinion. And people will say, okay, back on track or whatever, but they won't say, oh, it's a shitty divisional opponent and you should do that against them. Yeah. I doubt they'll say that. They'll just say, okay, Jalen Hurts has figured it out. But if it was Dak Prescott, your little Shatter the Script mini segment here, they'd be yanking at the chain saying,
oh, they're bashing bad teams.
Yeah.
They're bashing bad teams.
He should have 4 touchdowns against the Giants. Who doesn't? Oh, I don't know. The Packers. You can name a couple of teams in there that struggled against the Giants. But yeah, you're right. They're kind of catching some steam here. Tommy DeVito has performed better than Daniel Jones ever did this season. Those comments about the offensive line not being able to protect the quarterback have gone out the window for some reason. And DeVito has kind of come into his own as somebody where you really start to think Daniel Jones shouldn't have been paid that much. And that's an agenda I was right about. And I just think it was hilarious to go into the season and think that the Giants were that kind of team. And I'd been, again, off the record, I was talking about this with the kid. And I'll just make this short and sweet. The Giants last year, finishing 9-7-1 or whatever it was, and Daboll getting coach of the year, beating that team in the playoffs and the Vikings. If you remember, the NFC East played the AFC South, which was a terrible division last year outside of, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who barely made the playoffs off of an interception from Noah Brown off the chest and a pick 6 by the Jacksonville defense late in the year. Other than that, they're going 7-10. And the rest of the division sucks as well. It was a fraudulent year, and it was a really bad year to decide whether you want to pay a guy like Daniel Jones. And then on top of that, they said, oh, they want a road playoff game. Well, who did they play in that road playoff game? It was who everybody said was a fraudulent team, the Minnesota Vikings. And I
don't think anybody's arguing with you about how the Giants are fraudulent.
But the mainstream media, which we talked about very early in the year, the mainstream media pushed this agenda hard to say that the New York Giants were going to win. There were some people that said they're going to win the division. There were a lot of people that said that Daniel Jones was a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. And we get into the season, and here we are. And I just think
is also fair.
It just baffles me. I don't think it's Brian Daboll either. But that's my short and sweet kind of version of the New York Giants. But I said at the beginning of the podcast, or beginning of the season, the Giants would finish 7-10, and that the Washington Redskins would finish 5-12 because the schedule's a lot harder and they're going to shit the bed. Okay, here we go. This is your Monday night game. This is the biggest game of the year in terms of determining maybe who's the MVP favorite. Obviously, since Dak Prescott had one bad game out of the last 8 versus the Bills in a game where he only had 20 minutes of possession time compared to the Bills 45 minutes. But you got the 11-3 Baltimore Ravens versus the 11-3 San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are favored in this game -5.5. And a lot of people are arguing that whoever wins this game wins the MVP.
I would agree with that.
I would agree. And I want to say a couple things about Lamar Jackson, such as Man, this again and again, I think he's really proven me wrong. I always said that he is not the best thrower of the football in terms of accuracy, in terms of really changing the game through his arm. But at the same time, he has done a fantastic job once again this year with minimal weapons, a lot of injuries, being 11-3 first in the AFC. And I think they have a chance to win this game even without the running backs that they have. I know Keaton Mitchell just had that injury. They're going to ride with Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Melvin Gordon. No Mark Andrews. Going in there with Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Odell Beckham. Here's my hot take. And I understand I had some blowouts the first 2 games, but I think Lamar used his legs to defeat the San Francisco defense after the loss of Mitchell. I think Brock Purdy struggles through the air. I think he throws an interception or 2. However, I think Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey continue to roll in this one. The Ravens win this game 24-20.
Wow. That's bold.
It's a bold statement, and I'm willing to die on that hill and hoist that cross up the hill for everybody who might say the 49ers are unbeatable. I think this is a game where Lamar Jackson wins MVP, gets his second one, and it's not an outcome that I would like for, I guess, my agenda, but the Eagles losing to the Seattle Seahawks, I think something's in the air where the Dallas Cowboys could come out with this division and maybe a number 1 seed, which is crazy to think about.
That is crazy to think about after the game we just watched.
Very unlikely, but that's exactly why, is because the Cowboys just disappeared. They didn't come out the tunnel against the Buffalo Bills, and people think it's over until the 49ers and Eagles lose their last outings. So, hot take, 24-20 Ravens.
Well, this is a game, I'm interested. I don't know. I'll start with the Niners. I'm interested to see how they fare against arguably one of the best defenses in the league. I think the Browns have one of the best defenses, but the Ravens overall have just a very solid defense. And they've shown that time and time again in beating some top teams like the Lions earlier this year. They made the Lions look like a high school football team. But Jared made a good point earlier. Whoever wins this game, this is the other note I had, whoever wins this game is going to win MVP just based off of how they've been playing this season. And, this is a big game to kind of decide that factor. So, I think one of the big stats I had here for switching to the Ravens is like Lamar. Jared made a good point. Lamar has really developed himself as a better passer. I don't think he's got one of the best arms in the league, but he's got a formidable arm that makes plays when he needs to make plays. Like, he's not going to beat you down the field, but he's going to find ways to get it to, like, when Mark Andrews was out there or Zay Flowers in the flat, once in a while, OBJ post route that they hit, but now, he's got Isaiah Likely out there, and he's been a very good weapon for Lamar Jackson. So that's been very good for him. But the other stat I had is Lamar has really great success over NFC teams. And I think the narrative around that is that a lot of NFC teams don't see a quarterback like Lamar very often.
Exactly.
In the NFC, you've got Jalen Hurts. You've got, name somebody. There's not anybody else
I
like
really
that
don't
in the
think
NFC.
Yeah.
So, when people see him, they have to go look at a bunch of game film and figure out, hey, how can we, contain a quarterback that's just as fast as our best running back? So, I think he's only lost 1 game to NFC teams. At least that was the count before the year. I don't think he's lost to an NFC team this year that I can recall. But anyway, got a really good record against NFC teams. So with all that being said, I think Jared did a good job of basically summing up what I think the Niners are going to do. They're going to try and get the ball to McCaffrey early, see if they can break some type of running game with McCaffrey, and then try and hit Deebo sometimes in flat. But I do think Brock Purdy's going to struggle a little bit. This isn't the Eagles, and this isn't the Cowboys defense that just disappears for some unforsaken reason. But the Ravens defense, I feel like, is going to show up, and they're going to really make it hard for Brock Purdy. And I've always said, when it comes to Purdy, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's got something in there that's like strategically different or, special about him.
Yeah.
But he's a great system guy, and that's why Garoppolo worked well for the 49ers too. He's just really good at executing what's asked of him. But the way to get Purdy off his rocker is to rattle him. I mean, if you get to him on defense, he's like the whole thing everybody says now is he's a footwork king. He looks really good when he's in the pocket and his footwork's nasty, which, I can credit him for that. But if you get to him like the Browns did and a couple other teams, they make him look kind of stupid. And, I think that's the way to beat Brock Purdy. And I think the Ravens have a great opportunity to do that. So I'm kind of with Jared on this. I think the Ravens end up beating the Niners here, not because I have a Cowboys hope, but I think that just it's something different that the Niners haven't seen. And I think the Ravens pulled this one out, and I'm going to say 20 – man, I had a score on here, but I don't really think that anymore. I'm going to say 24-21 Ravens.
Okay. Yeah, and in the past, the 49ers struggle with dual threat quarterbacks, and you make a great point. There really isn't. I mean, Hurts is a dual threat kind of guy, but he's not a Lamar Jackson who can juke you out of your shoes and explode for 30, 40 yards. But I wanted to highlight the Ravens defense here. And this is kind of the main point why I believe that they'll put a stop to the offense in some sort of way. So week 1, they played Houston. I understand we didn't know who Houston was exactly, and that's a decent offense. They allowed 9 points. Cleveland, week 4, they allowed 3 points. And then moving on to Detroit in week 7, they blew them out, allowed 6 points. Then to go to the week 9 in Seattle, they allowed 3 points. And then you move down to Jacksonville in week 15, another winning team. They allowed 7 points.
Yeah, so they're good against teams that are going to eventually be in the playoffs. I mean,
yes.
You named the Lions are, 10-3 now? 10-4?
They're 9-5.
9-5, yeah. So, I mean, they're in the playoffs, most likely. And then the Jags, too. I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but they're great defense. That's what I was saying earlier is there's arguably one of the best defenses or the best defense in the league, maybe second behind the Browns. But, defense travels. And that's the Ravens headline right there is that they're just a really solid defense.
What's crazy, too, is nobody has talked about them all year. But we've talked about the 49ers defense and how they have the best linebacker crew in the NFL. Well, number 2 is the Ravens with Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith.
Yeah.
That's number 2. And Brock Purdy hadn't seen much of that, much of outstanding linebacker play all year. And the one time that he did, which you just mentioned, Cleveland, what happened? They lost.
Yeah.
They played a crappy game. So that's kind of why, and it's not to say that the 49ers are worse or better. I just think that they catch them by surprise this game. That sounds like you do too. All right. TRAK ranking. All right. We got our top 3 stocking stuffers in our TRAK ranking this week.
I think this is a great TRAK ranking, by the way.
Yeah, I think this is a good one too. All right. I'll let you go with your gold, and then I will follow up with my gold as well. Top 3 stocking stuffers.
I've always got an honorable mention in here. I know I always say that every time, but I always feel like it's a nice little poke at something. But for my honorable mention, I have soap. Our parents always
put that in there.
Our parents always put in like some. When I was growing up, they always put in some type of body wash or something. And it might not be what you always use. I feel like I'm the type of person where I use the same type of body wash because I like it. I might change the scent, but I stick with my go-to. But it's nice, about come June or July or even sometime later in the year where you run out of soap and you're like, shit, what am I going to wash myself with? And you open up your cabinet and you forget you have the soap that your parents gave you, months ago at Christmas. And you're like, oh, there you go. And it's like a nice little substitute, a little change up and something that comes in and saves you so you can still smell clean. So that's my honorable mention. But my gold is some gadget you didn't think you needed and your mom saw during Black Friday. So every year I get some, whether it be like a multi-tool for your car, a cool can opener you'll probably use once, or some cheap flashlight that you'll just stash somewhere in your house that like for me, I have the one that my parents gave me last year, just sitting on top of my fridge that when I take out our dog, I just kind of shine it in the yard and then put it back up there. So for me, my gold ranking is just some type of gadget you get, whether it be a multi-tool or a can opener or like a seatbelt cutter or something that your parents just like were walking through Kohl's or something like that on Black Friday, and you're walking out of on the checkout and they're looking around and they got all that stuff up there and they're like, oh yeah, a multi-tool, that'd be good stuff.
That would be good, yeah. That's
so
exactly
that's my goal.
All right, yeah, my gold ranking is DVDs. We used to get,
that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a solid one.
Whenever we were younger, we would each get a different movie, and it was always a damn good one. And you were like,
yeah, it's a damn, solid
I got the Avengers. Like, hell yeah, let me get the event. Oh, and it's a Blu-ray. Like, let's get it. And I mean, of course, when we got older, we kind of stopped that tradition a little bit. But I think if you're having children, if you are, if you have kids that are that age or whatever, I know most of our audience doesn't have kids or whatever, but hey, do a movie for a DV or for a stocking stuffer. And I remember my favorite one was King Arthur. I got the movie King Arthur with Charlie Hunnam starring in it, and I was like, this is actually a banger of a movie.
That's kind of like you just unlocked a childhood memory. I mean, nobody's gonna go buy a DVD anymore, to your point, because I mean they're just so outdated. But I totally forgot about that, man. Christmas cheer, right there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's a good one. All right, am I going my platinum now?
Yep.
All right, my platinum is a brand new charger. I feel like every year I get some type of charger for my phone, and that kind of comes my like go-to. Last year I got a nice one that was, the wireless charging, 20 amp on it. So my wireless charging was a kick-started, and that's always nice. So I feel like you always need a charger. You can never have enough of them. The charger that I'm actually talking about is sitting right in front of me right now. It's my desk charger now. But yeah, I feel like a good charger or some type of electrical accessory is a good platinum ranking.
A nice little car charger.
Yes.
Yeah, the one you have in your truck already is just like vaporized, and it charges 1% every 3 hours. It basically just maintains your battery. It doesn't actually charge it.
Yeah.
And you get that new hitter, and you're ready to go for corporate America. All right, my platinum ranking for this TRAK ranking is a fresh pair of socks and underwear.
Crap.
Yeah, I feel like that one's good. That might have been your diamond, but yeah, I mean, I just feel like you open them up and you're like, dang, some dry fit Hanes. You're like, I can go to Target or whatever, and I can't find this shit anywhere, and I just get these nice pair of underwear, and you're like, a fresh pair of Adidas, New Balance, or Reebok socks. Let's go. Like, I didn't have to go get this myself and spend another $20 on a pair of socks. Like, and it's a hitter. And because you're like, I'm gonna wear them this morning. I'm gonna take off the shitty socks that I have right now and this pair of underwear that I've had for 4 years, and I'm gonna switch them up. So yeah, I mean, it's a fresh pair of socks and underwear for my platinum. Is that your diamond?
You took my diamond. And the reason I say socks and underwear is because as a man, as a guy, you don't ever really think about going out and getting new socks and underwear. I've had, pairs of socks that I've had for a long while. So I actually, since I've moved out of my parents' house and I'm married and all now, one of the Christmas gifts that I asked from my mom was socks and underwear. Because my mom always got it for me. And that's the point that mom made to me, was she's like, well, I was like, I never even think about it. Mom's like, yeah, it's because I get it for you every year. So it's like a fresh reload every single year. So I think that just goes, that's like the theme of my list is, and that's why I put diamond socks and underwear. It's like your mom and dad get you these small stuff that you just don't ever think about, or you think that like you're not going to go put money on. So you're never going to go probably buy a new charger. You're never going to think about a new cheap flashlight when you get or you get a flat tire on the side of the road and you got that cheap flashlight sitting in your car. So for me, it's the socks and underwear, because it's just something that like you just don't go out and really think about buying, but your mom gets you every year, and it's always clutch. So that was my diamond.
Yeah. My diamond is Apple accessories, and it's a lot like your platinum. But yeah, like the chargers, the headphone cases, the phone cases, whatever you want to call it, anything for your phone or Apple Watch or your Apple or your AirPods, any type of accessory that belongs to it, even if it's like a stand next to your bed where you can put your stuff, like a platform charger where you can kind of just set your phone on top of it and it starts charging it. Those high-powered, high-amp velocity chargers that you plug into the wall and it charges your phone in freaking 5 minutes. Any type of accessory like that. So yeah, basically your platinum and our diamonds were just kind of flip-flopped.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right, and that is your TRAKing, your top 3 stocking stuffers for this week. And I've actually got our kids' picks real quick, which we'll present. And so this is for week 16, and this is presented to you by the kid. So to start off, the first prop of the 3-leg parlay is you've got CD Lamb, and it's over rush plus reception touchdowns 0.5 versus the Miami Dolphins. Then you've got Jordan Love over 1.5 pass touchdowns versus the Carolina Panthers. Joe Mixon over 18.5 reception yards versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then if you want some bonus content, and like I said, I'm feed Joe Mixon this week versus Pittsburgh. If you want some bonus coverage, we've also got Dalton Kincaid over 30.5 receiving yards. I think this is a really good one against a Chargers team that is really giving up, and you can see some good production from the Bills offense. Definitely not allowing 63 points this week if you're the Chargers defense, but Dalton Kincaid can get that on 2 catches with Josh Allen. And then another Dalton Schultz over 31.5 receiving yards. He had 58 or so the last week versus his previous opponent. He's playing Cleveland this week without CJ Stroud, so just be wary of that. And then the last one, this is your demon time pick, and this is a new feature on Prize Picks where you have to go over, but you get more rewards if you take it. And it's 0.5 rush plus reception touchdowns versus the Raiders. So if you want a demon time pick, go with Travis Kelce. And of course, if you get all 6 of those correct, it's 26 times your buy-in amount or your deposit.
It's pretty solid lineup.
Pretty solid lineup there. And shout out to the kid for giving us those kids' picks. And now we'll move into the Christmas Eve special. 10-4 Dallas Cowboys at your 10-4 Miami Dolphins at Hard Rock Stadium, 3:25 p.m. on Fox. And you may have the spread on this one. I did not provide the spread. Normally we don't. Normally sometimes we do, but it could be relevant. Absolutely. But we got our keys to success, our official predictions, followed by Mama's Don't Let You Cowboys, focusing on all the things that you don't want the Cowboys to do for this game and avoid. But what are your keys to success for this game? Starting with the offense, and then we'll flip it and do the defense.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking up the spread. It's -1.5 Miami right now.
Interesting. Wow.
So did you say you want me to start with the offense?
Yeah, just keys to success in general, offense, defense, however you got it split up.
Okay, so I've got offense first. And this is exactly what I was talking to you about yesterday. Sticking to the script and finding a rhythm. So if you watched any part of that Bills game, and I know you already recapped it on the last episode, they had no rhythm. There was no script. I've been saying for a long time that an offense and almost any offensive coordinator, they have openers. And what that is they have a first couple play scripts, maybe 10 to 20 plays of what they think they're going to come out and run versus what they think they're going to get from the opposing team. And I feel like what I've been saying is that's really hard to do when your defense sorry, the thing I've been messing with just broke. It's really hard to do when your defense is just getting mauled through, and by the time you have the ball back, it's 14-0, and it's the second quarter. So my thing for the offense is stick to the script, don't freak out, and find a rhythm. Pass blocking needs to be pure. They need to have a better pass blocking, especially last week. It was horrible. It was not good. Dak had no time to throw the ball. They couldn't get anything going. I mean, it just looked like a completely different football team. And the last thing I want to hear is play with confidence. And that goes just with exactly what I was saying is you are a good football team. You are a good offense. Show it. So, I mean, last week they just looked like they went into a shell, abandoned the script, and just started saying, we got to throw the ball and get back into this game. And it just did not go very well. So I want to see that out of the Cowboys offense this week is just get into something that's a rhythm, find Dak in a groove. That's when he's at his best, is when he gets like 2 or 3 or 4 throws in, he gets 2 or 3, 4 straight completions. It's almost like when you're playing Madden, he hits his X factor. And he just kind of is like, all right, I'm going to groove. We're rolling the ball. Let's get this thing going. So that's kind of what I'm looking for from the offense. And I think that if they do that, they have a much better chance of winning than they did last week against the Bills.
Yeah, good points there. And then my key to success for the offense is I'm going to sound like a lot like Jason Garrett here, but I saw some really good things from Tony Pollard last week, and it's been increasing over the past couple of weeks. And there was a report that came out that said that he was feeling better and better, that you never really know how healthy you are until you get into the season, that it took him a couple of weeks to get back into the game shape. But I think a good idea here is to establish the run and control time of possession when necessary.
I agree.
And and my main point of emphasis on that is to prevent Miami's offense from being on the field a lot and, tiring out our defense and whatnot. And I think that's a good part of game strategy. It's something that we talked about early on in the season with this West Coast offense is we game manage when we need to, scheme-wise, and take those pop plays when they're presented to us. But we're not out here trying to light up the scoreboard and score as quickly as possible and to just put the Miami Dolphins right back on the field so that they can score the same amount of points that we did.
That sounds very Kellen Moore-esque.
Exactly.
We're not that team anymore.
Exactly. We're not that team anymore. We're running this Texas Coast offense, and we didn't be able to get into that rhythm last week versus the Bills, but you saw it in perfect form versus the Eagles at home.
I was just about to say that. What you just said about we're not trying to go do that goes hand in hand with what I'm saying. It's the rhythm, finding the execution, and going down the field.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be a big contributor to winning this game versus the Miami Dolphins. And then my second one is kind of to go hand in hand with like taking those shots and those opportunities when provided to you, when you get that look on defense, which Dak Prescott can find, is light up the secondary. And the way to do that is by incorporating Jake Ferguson and Brandon Cooks. And again, I've been talking about it. I've been preaching about it all year. When you get Jake Ferguson involved, it brings down those safeties. It makes them pay attention. It brings the linebackers underneath. You can use them as decoy, and that opens up the middle of the field, the intermediate throws, and the deep throws towards the boundary. And that is where CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks start to really, really thrive, and where you can get like a gash throw to Michael Gallup as well. Unfortunately, Kyle Phillips for the Miami Dolphins, had that injury with his Achilles. Christian Wilkins is going to do a pretty decent job patching things up in the middle of the defense there. But I don't anticipate too much pressure on Dak Prescott, which I think is going to completely change his game offensively when he is protected, when any quarterback is protected in that matter. Dak Prescott is going to play at an MVP level this year. And I expect to see some really good things, a really high completion percentage taken with the defense is giving you. Yes, you're playing against Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, and Byron Jones over there. Those cats out there are going to be good in coverage. But if you can attack the middle of the field, you can take a lot of pressure off of the receivers beating man-to-man coverage and that pressure and making play zone and that's when Dak starts to cook. Those are my keys to success.
I think the other key to success too is involving Jake Ferguson because of those cornerbacks. They're going to have to get him involved early. Yeah, exactly.
All right, your keys to success for the defense.
This one's simple. Tackle somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, last week was probably the worst NFL showcase of tackling I've ever seen. I mean, it was completely embarrassing. I have a bone to pick with our defense, man. Mozzie Smith, the next thing is losing Hankins was horrible for our run defense. Mozzie Smith has been what I was a little bit afraid of after I watched a couple preseason games. He's been kind of a disappointment. I mean, he does not look good. So he needs to fill the role of Hankins fast, or teams are probably going to run all over us. And then that goes. Next step is the safeties. Safeties got to step up big time. They've been a huge mishap for the Cowboys, and that was something that we actually thought was going to be a big thing for Dallas with Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Curse. Those guys, you would have thought, you would have saw something a little bit better out of them, and they just have not looked very good. So I think, the last thing I'll say is, play physical. Speed kills, but sometimes punching speed in the mouth can slow everything down pretty fast. Speed's fast, obviously, but you hit them a couple of times and all of a sudden things change. And that's what Dallas needs to do, is need to play aggressive, and that goes right along with the tackling. We're going to need to see something out of our linebackers and get after the Miami Dolphins offense. I think their offense, I've called candy ass earlier this year, but what I'll say is that I think that if you get after them and you kind of rattle Tua and you're kind of hitting them in the mouth, it changes their whole look of offense. So I think when they get comfortable and they think that you get scared of the speed, that's when they start taking care of their opponents. And I think that's Dallas's best case on defense, is to really get after them. What scares me, though, is we're a very man-based team. So it's literally going to be do or die. If we don't get after them, then we are going to get burnt fast. And that's what scares me the most. So that's my keys for defense.
Yeah, and mine are pretty similar. Like stop the run, interior defensive line plus the edge, and it goes hand in hand with what you say, but tackle somebody. I think preventing the big threat deep with two high safeties is the best way to combat Tyreek Hill and that deep threat that you got to prevent with him. He's the number one wide receiver this year. He's arguably an MVP candidate, and he's going to take the top off the defense. He took a rest game last week. He's going to be back this week, and he's going to be fresh. He's going to be fresh-legged. But then, of course, Jalen Waddle in the middle kind of gashed people on slants, crossers, and whatnot. If you can generate pressure and quick pressure to Tua Tagovailoa, you'll see Tua turn the ball over. And that is something that if we get to, it could turn into an ugly one for Miami, which is a hot take of mine. But with Micah Parsons, usually when he takes those, when the defense takes a game like they had against the Bills, usually the following week they respond with this absolute monsoon of like pressure. And talking federal pressure, Osa and Osa Odigizua, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong, Sam Williams, those kind of guys I think they're going to get after the quarterback pretty well. I think we're going to be sure tackled with Marquise Bell, and Wanye Thomas is going to probably get a little more playing time this week. And those things are important. If you can get to Tua quick, which their offense is get the ball out quick and not hang on to the ball too long, and let Tyreek do the rest, because it doesn't take very long for Tyreek Hill to get 15-plus yards down the field and throw a football. I think you can see really good things come out if we start generating some really quick pressure. Of course, that's not the easiest thing in the world, but Connor Williams, the guard for the Dolphins, is out. The rest of the offensive line is not top 10, I would argue. I mean, I could be completely wrong on that, but, it's something that you can easily generate pressure on. If Michael Parsons and them can generate pressure against Lane Johnson, the Philadelphia Eagles line, you can generate pressure against Miami.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, so predictions, then we'll follow it up with our Mamas Don't Let Your Cowboys. My prediction for this game is that the Cowboys win this one 33-26. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I think with the implications of the Philadelphia Eagles losing to the Seattle Seahawks, and the possibility that the 49ers might lose to the Ravens, providing an access to the number one seed for the Cowboys somehow, some way, just giving them that chance at it. I think they come in with a very big purpose. And, Miami's pretty far ahead in their division with 10-4. The rest of their schedule isn't too terrifying. They could come out and they want to conserve Tyreek Hill. They want to conserve the health of their players. Waddle's been kind of banged up throughout the year. and they might come out less energized. And also, I mean, people always keep arguing that this is the fraud bowl, that, that the Miami Dolphins haven't ever beaten a good team, but the Cowboys have only beaten good teams at home. And that this is a test that can the Cowboys beat a playoff team all away, and can the Miami Dolphins beat anybody that's good anywhere? So a lot of people are arguing that this is a fraud bowl. I personally do not believe that the Dallas Cowboys are frauds one bit. I think 2 games don't define a season, and we'll see. We'll see if they can put their money where their mouth is. But I've got the Cowboys 33, the Dolphins 26.
That's interesting. I have a note. I said I am uncertain of what the Bills game really showed here. Were we sick? Did the cold affect us? Did we just lose our cold because our defense couldn't stop a cold? I don't know. But maybe it was a fluke game. But I am here to say this. I will feel a lot better if Dallas comes out and beats Miami away. And It's imperative for a playoff run, just for any team in general, to get the monkey off their back that they can beat good teams away. And we need to do it in an aggressive manner, like what I've been saying. So I need the defense to prove me wrong and actually go out there with the saying that defense travels. That's what I said earlier. I need the defense to come up and say that. I think that game, the Bills game, put a really nasty taste in Dallas's mouth. And I think they got punched, and they are pissed off about it, and I hope they are. And I think both teams have a lot to prove in this game. But I just look at the rosters, and I know they have Tyreek Hill. I just like Dallas in this matchup. Like I said before, I did not like us in the Bills matchup, and it turned out to be right. But I like Dallas in this matchup. I just do. Like if I take my bias away from it, I just look at our teams, and I think Dallas just has a better executing team all around than the Miami does. So I've got Dallas winning this game, and I agree with Jared. It's going to be a shootout for sure. Yeah. And I have Dallas winning 38-35.
Yeah, and there's a clip out there as well talking about, so Vic Fangio is the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, and if you remember years past, the Denver Broncos absolutely scorched the Cowboys at home 30-0 before we started scoring some garbage points, and Dak Prescott had some villainy things to say about Vic Fangio, and basically saying that shit ain't gonna fly this year, and we'll see if he backs up his word. Of course, I've been talking about him being in villain mode all year, but I'm hoping he can back up those claims and start getting after it in an away game versus a 10-4 team like Miami. But of course, if we beat them, it's that the Miami Dolphins are frauds, and of course we should have beat them, like we were talking earlier. But all right, mamas, don't let your Cowboys. And this is all the things that we don't want the Cowboys to do in the upcoming game. What is your mamas don't let your Cowboys?
Mamas don't let your Cowboys lose the ability to tackle and stop the run game. I already said everything I needed to say about that earlier. You're going to have to play physical. You're going to have to punch them in the mouth to have any chance in this game. And you can't just sit there and, call yourselves a good defense and then go out and get punched twice in 2 consecutive weeks again. Exactly. So that's that. I think that is the key to this game.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mine is mamas don't let your Cowboys fold on the road again. And I kind of put the on the road again in there as like the Willie Nelson on the road again song. But man, I'm sick and tired of this road game narrative. I'm sick and tired of going to an away game and just not even coming out of the tunnel. And I don't know if it's a reflection on coaching. I don't know if it's a reflection on just the personnel. I don't know if it's that we're not about that life. Whatever it may be, scrap it. Shovel it, throw it in the shitter, flush the toilet, and let's beat the shit out of Miami. Like I'm tired of expecting crap on the road and getting it. And I'm hoping they flip that narrative, shadow the script this week against Miami, and give us a little Christmas Eve happiness before we all go into Christmas Day. So, all right. Well, this has been your the Rook and the Kid Christmas special, your 2-part edition series. And this is something that we've been proud of, and this is going to be our last episode until 2024. Of course, we have not put too much money into this whole thing, and you kind of have to buy what you want to get and all that kind of stuff. Blah blah blah. I get it, but we are very thankful for those who have been supporting this podcast since day one. We have been very appreciative of the engagement that we've gotten, the shout outs, the likes, the downloads. I mean, you name it. The feedback, especially early on and midway through it, sticking through us with, Apple wired earbuds and shitty cameras. And now we're moving into some high-tech equipment, some in-person appearances. And so we're really excited for what we have in store for 2024, which we're going to announce, closer to the end of the NFL season. Some fantastic and fun ideas to incorporate more of your voices, more of the voices of guests, and really elevate each contributor's role in this process. But it has been a fantastic 2023. We can't wait to see you guys in 2024, get more engagement, see new followers, new faces, and shatter the script together as the Rook and the Kid podcast. So we want to thank the analyst, the medical guy, the kid, and of course, pat myself in the back, whatever. But it's been a journey. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope everybody has a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas. Spend time with your family. Praise Jesus. Jesus is King. And we will see y'all in 2024.
Merry Christmas.
God bless us. Yeah, God bless us, everyone. Yeah. All right. Merry Christmas. Jesus is King. And go Cowboys.